Welcome to the Mindful Man Project, where we discuss issues, wins, losses, and learnings of men today. We leave no stone unturned, no avenue unexplored. The time is now for men across the globe to take stock, know who they are, to stand in their power, to guide those men coming behind us into the future. Creating a world that our children and our children's children will thrive and flourish, as we have done the work before them. I'm your host, Tyson Melvins. Welcome. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Mindful Man Project. On today's episode, I have Jaguar Heart. He is a healer, physicist, mentor to a lot of people. After a decade of success as a multi-business owner in various industries, Jag found himself uninspired, empty, and lacking purpose and drive. After retreating into what was a deep path of soul-searching, he decided to change his environment and moved to a farm in the mountains where deep healing and transformation ensued. He decided, or better, it was decided upon him, to take the path of service and explore becoming a therapist to help people work through the very thing he had walked himself. At the core of his work, he helps his clients to identify their core trauma, break the patterns that hold them back, move forward into a new life, develop secure, loving relationships, to dissolve the deepest constraints of the mind, while also releasing the suppressed and repressed emotions that have been denied and projected onto the world. Today's episode is going to be one of those ones where we really click and hit off on so many levels. Without further ado, well, everyone, welcome to the episode. I'm sitting here today with Jaguar Heart. We've connected through the social media scene. I guess this is how most people tend to do it these days. And what we've really come to know is like we've both got a lot of things in common. Masculinity movement, the truthful movement, and we just had a bit of a discussion off air, and just seeing behind the veil. So welcome to Jaguar. Thank you for joining me this morning. Let's just start off with just a bit of a description of yourself and what you've been up to, what you're up to right now. In the bio, I've already kind of covered that, but if you want to let the people know.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the platform as well, man. Yeah, and we've connected. We've got, almost identical views on a lot of things. So a lot of people that listen to this will kind of get where I'm at anyway. So the main thing that I'm really looking at the moment is around masculinity, and also teaching my process to people as well, which is I'm looking forward to doing that because it's important. But like what constitutes masculinity? Like how has it gone to such a place where like the number one attribute of toxic masculinity is unconditional physical toughness. Now, if that's the case and that were true, then I hope I'm the most toxic man on the planet, because I think that's an excellent attribute. And it's written typically by these, woke leftist universities, which are high on the neo-Marxist communist bandwagon to promote this kind of stuff in order to sort of kill off the real men and the weak, the strong men in society. But we've got that. And then we've also got like the Andrew Tate, Dan Bilzerian kind of, prophets, quote unquote, I use air quotes there, who are just, in my opinion, the Kardashians for men, and it's good because I've seen a couple of accounts out there brandish them that follow me, that I follow them, and there's some big accounts, see that and then start to use my terminology for the description for them as well. So it's really about, I think, educating men on this really important point that, and even interestingly, I just had a friend message me and she was really upset because she's hearing about all this Andrew Tate stuff, which is this red pill manosphere stuff, which is out there, which we can go into.
Yeah.
That's just feminism for men. It's a bunch of betas that are pretending they're alphas, trying to dominate weaker men in order to generate some kind of superiority over women. It's like, it's feminism for men, same shit. doesn't, you can call it whatever you want, but it's just as toxic. So these are the things that I'm really getting the message out for at the moment, which is can be controversial. I get a lot of attack online and a lot of abuse universally from women, by the way. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on and I'm into at the moment.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one just to even observe with like what you're putting out there and like the dialogue and stuff that you're having online. You can see how it would be abrasive to some people. And again, it comes back down to something like we were talking about before, is that factual kind of input into like what is actually going on and how you've actually come to the conclusion on your, like what I spoke about in another podcast the other day. It's like what's your truth and what is actually true, and how you've actually come to that truth is, has you just been fed it through the media? Have you been, or have you actually taken that time to process it? And in that, it's like, I think is like when you unpack it a little further, it comes back down to a value system. And with a modern man and a man who is centered in a true wholesome value system, it's very hard to shift him from that state, like from that state of true masculinity, rather than having like being told that he needs to drive around in cars and like and be drinking all the drinks. And I like, look, I've been there back in the day when I used to play rugby. Like I thought, yeah, this is great, like I'm going to be drinking all the drinks, getting all the chicks. But then when you realize that's not actually real masculinity, that's part of it, but it's also a bit of a toxic way of looking at it. And then you realize, what is my actual value system, to then realize that that's the rock solid nature that I actually really want to be in. And like for me, it's like family, and it's like the main messages that a lot of these accounts that are pushing the really kind of wholesome masculinity, rather than this toxic kind of, like you say, Kardashian masculinity. What would you kind of say is like your value system, your biggest values as like what you would live by? That's one thing that I really love to know.
Yeah, so I look at like, there are boundaries, right, where people can't cross, but boundaries have to be based on values which are independent and morals which are social. So we look at this, and I'm glad that you went there this early. So it's like, we look at social morals and they're corrupt as fuck, right? So what it actually has bred is like a wounded masculine, which buys into any figure. Like if Andrew Tate's a proponent of like where people are just lapping him up, it shows how far away from real masculinity we've actually gotten. I don't see him as a true masculine figure. Okay, so he's a kickboxer. So what? Okay, good on you. You can fight. Congratulations. So can I. Well done. So you got a Bugatti. I think anyone that goes into that level of fame that quickly, he's got handlers for sure. He's a plant. There's no question about it. Like, look at Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg's a little fucking moron that was 12, 11 years old and telling the world about climate change. Like, for fuck's sake, and people buy into it. It's like, come on, like you're an idiot if you buy into that. Like, there's no excuse for it anymore. There's enough information out there to be able to discern, and discernment's an important value to have, right? Dignity is another one, integrity, and unconditional physical toughness. So, you know, when I look at this stuff, it's like morals are not a good thing to be based on from a social aspect, to look at how you should base your values. We have to go back in time to look at what was socially moral. You know, you look at Marcus Aurelius when he was the emperor of Rome, and around that time where they had strong values, right? They had strong social morals. They were, you know, committed to God. They were in families. They believed in monogamy, things like that. But we have to go back in time to understand where social morals developed a world that was run in a healthy way. And life's never going to be perfect. So we have to go back to that. So I believe in Stoicism. A lot of people think Stoicism is absence of emotion. It's not. It's the ability to handle large emotions and have capacity without it letting it rule you. So you still feel, you still have emotions, but you base it on that. And then you go into what's important to you individually. Yeah. So individually is for me, respect and self-respect, it's dignity, it's integrity, and honor. Honor comes from honesty, dishonor comes from dishonesty. And those are really some of the other ones, sort of a bit more peripheral, would be gentleness, kindness, and grace. And these are sort of more in like what I see is like more of the spiritual father aspect, more of like maybe you could say the king archetype, which I believe that when you reach that point, that's like the crown, right? The king wears the crown, but it's not the crown that you put on your head like nobility or royalty. It's the crown, like the halo in the connection to the father and the spiritual Godhead. And so at that point, likely when a man's matured through his archetypical nature or his transcendence of his wounded masculine, he's going to want to have a family. He's going to want to get married. He's going to want to devote himself to that. Chances are he's got a strong spiritual faith as well, whatever that is, if it's Islam or Christianity or whatever. And so that's what I see is like a typical byproduct of a man that separates himself from social morals that are going on, looks back in time to the strong moral social constructs of ancient Rome or other places around there, and takes bits from it and stands in his independence, in his value system, which then creates boundaries that can't be broken, because boundaries have to have a consequence. And he won't back down. Like, I don't back down online. I speak my truth. I stand for what's right. And I don't give a fuck if people get offended or not. They only get offended if they're usually making an emotional decision and it's not coming from logic and reason. And so that's kind of my structural breakdown of all of that.
Beautiful, man. It's absolutely, you've touched on a lot of stuff that, like, yeah, again, it's just resonating a lot with me. And I feel like there's been this kind of new age kind of spell put on a lot of people, as kind of the Tate situation has with like the Kardashian masculinity. I also feel like there's a little bit of this kind of new age feminine masculine coming in that's almost kind of watering down what actually true masculinity is as well, because of the going too far into that spiritual realm and like seeking too much of that sort of thing, or maybe like going without, like you said, look, without that boundary, without kind of anchoring back and integrating back into what is your value system. I just would, I'd be interested, because like, you got your Christianity and stuff like that. I follow Will from Ren of Men and listen to his podcast as well. And I noticed that you posted something about him the other day and how he's been on his journey about through his spiritual realms, doing ayahuasca, going and doing Rishikesh and all that sort of stuff. And it's been interesting for me. I grew up, I'm not a Catholic myself, but I grew up throughout school going to Catholic school, so I was exposed to Christianity or Catholicism throughout my school life. And once I finished those school, I pushed it away completely. I don't want to have anything to do with this. Like, this is like, I could see what was kind of this indoctrination kind of happening. And then again, come through my own journey, again, going through the spiritual journeys and plant medicines and all that, and I've come back to this point now where I've realized, like you said, take the little parts from here, there, and find those little bits and pieces of what actually can build you as a man. So I'm interested into what your thoughts are on that kind of super new age kind of drawing people into unlocking maybe more of the feminine masculine that may not actually be needed for men right now.
Man, awesome. I'm glad that you touched on this, because I see this a lot, right? Like, I've even had men write to me saying, you can never be in your full masculine until you're in your feminine. And I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. What are you talking about? Like, I mean, you know me, I just give it to it straight, right? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, there's no evidence from a biological scientific nature that we have masculine and feminine energy. There's no evidence for it. Trees don't have it. Animals don't have it. Why do we have it? Like, where did this come from, except Carl Jung with the anima and the animus, and then based on the yin yang symbol, which is like black dot, white circle, black drop, white circle, and vice versa. But like you can adopt feminine traits
and
masculine traits in the opposite sex. But what I see that it's really a proponent of, and this new age spirituality, people like, and we're on the same page about that dangerous human being, Aubrey Marcus. I think he's super dangerous, and I think he's like kind of like the leader of neo-paganistic, paganism, new age cult, right? Like you look at his wife, her video, she's like, Will mentioned it to me actually. And she's on the bed crawling on all fours in this like dark red, quite seductive, like basically with a stick-on bikini, moaning sexually, saying, "Take me to God and rise goddess." And I'm like, this just looks like Luciferian worship. That's what it looks like to me. Because it's this proponent to this idea of we're all one, right? Maybe that's true, maybe it isn't, I don't know. But if we look at this like concept of we're all one, what's going on in the world at the moment? One world government, one world currency. New age is the spiritual belief that we're all one. One world religion is being created. Like that's a pattern. I just look at patterns. And so if we look at this new age concept that men need to be in like harness their inner goddess. Some dude, like I posted his video and I was like, this is ridiculous, man. He was in a dress dancing, saying, "Oh, there's a queen inside you." I'm like, not fucking me, mate. I'm not. There's no queen inside of me that wants to come out. Like my woman is my queen to me. Like she's the feminine. I don't need any of that. I don't want her to come home while I'm covered in coconut oil doing sensual dancing. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Like I'm not going to do that. If you want to do it, fill your boots, but I'm not fucking being a proponent of that. And so I think there's this real toxic nature that men need to be more sensitive and more embodied and more emotional. And who are the ones telling us that? Women. Women are saying that. And it's like, oh, femininity is the answer to everything. It heals everything. It's like femininity is fucking chaos. Mother Nature is chaos. She's brutal. She's unstable. The masculine makes order out of the chaos, not feminine. And so these women are like telling men how to be men. I'm like, you don't know how to be a man. You're not one, despite the trans movement and all that thinking they're whatever. But like, we've got to look at this thing where it's like, I'm a big proponent against it. I think the answer to wounded toxic masculinity is healthy masculinity. Healthy masculinity is the answer. Then if you want to go dancing in a dress and all that shit, all right, have fun, right? Like do whatever you want. Chances are that when you get into your healthy masculinity, you won't need it because you'll feel and realize how fucking awesome true masculinity is. Like it's awesome. Like being a grounded, strong, present, driven, purpose-fueled man, to me, like that's the highest expression. And it's like, I don't need to go dancing in a dress to try to harness that.
Yeah. beautifully said, and it's funny because I just, while you were sitting there talking, I was just sitting there like and thinking about times in my life where like we'd do the dress ups and stuff like that, go out on the drink, or dress up as a woman. You're like, and then I was just thinking, it's like before I've got to this point in the last probably 4 to 5 years, I was like, there was this kind of pull, like, oh, let's go to the Mardi Gras, like, and like all dress up, and like, but why? Like, why is there that need? And I always questioned it. I never actually did it. I was like, why do I need to? Like, I'm a heterosexual man who, yes, you can do what you want to do, but why do I need to sit there and dress up like a woman? And like you said, now I've got my queen. The thing is, that then you then can elevate her. You can elevate her and you can continue to lift her up, and she stands there with you rather than you being the queen and the king and then essentially you almost take on that jester archetype, because like you're trying to be everybody, and there's this kind of like, look at me, I'm here, I'm doing this. Like it's and yeah, I feel like when you think about like Joseph Campbell and stuff going on the hero's journey, it's not until you actually go on that hero's journey and actually realize that I don't need to be all that to anybody. All I need to be is, to me, truthful. And finding that truth inside then allows you that freedom to like actually stand in your manhood and actually live it and breathe it. And like you said, it actually is amazing when you can sit there and you go, yeah, I can do all. Like now, I don't have to rely on anyone. That's the big thing. I don't, and that's the big thing for me. I can rely on myself to look after my family, whether anything comes around. Because I know myself and in my masculinity that I can tackle whatever comes to me because I'm so centered and rock solid in what I know that that nobody out there can tell me what I'm going to do, because it's like, and that's I think that's why those movements now are attempting to dismantle that, because as soon as a man knows what he wants and knows what he can do, he becomes a dangerous man. And not a dangerous man in a toxic masculinity way, a dangerous man to the people making the decisions. Because that's, you've even got to look at, like, I feel with some of the armed forces, like with all respect to the guys and women who are in the armed forces, they've had that masculinity kind of chopped out of them to a point where they're actually just become like a almost a robot or told what to do. And that I keep questioning, like, why has not an old ex veteran or someone like that stepped up into that manhood who actually has the skills to do what needs to be done to some of these people to actually change the course of history? Because these people have that they are men. They are men who have skills, you know. And then I'm not saying that people should go out there and knock people off, but it's like I just keep wondering. I keep asking that question: is like, where did those men, like those hardened men, or I guess that's it. It's hardened men. Um, yeah. So like, and that's a question that I kind of keep coming back to. It's like, where are those men in history that are going to stand up or stand in their truth towards those powers? And I think that's like yourself and I, like, we know what we're on about, we know what we're doing, we know what our purpose is, and we're driven by that purpose to benefit humanity in a way that it actually empowers other men to rise up into their own. And they don't have to rise up and fight, they can rise up and just be strong men to then say, like, no, I'm not going to put that shit in my body, I'm not going to allow you to take the money from me, because I'm not going to allow you to take my house from me. I'm not like, this is what I know, and we're going to stay and knit it. And I think that's what the beautiful thing of the last couple of years is as actually shown, there are people starting to rise to that point in time to hold that line, to stand in that boundary, and then people can come up and step up. It's kind of like that. I find it really interesting sometimes with how we, as a society, we watch Hollywood movies and stuff like that and draw all this like inspiration and stuff from certain like war movies, and Braveheart always comes to mind. You know, Braveheart is like that movie essentially is what is occurring right now. It's like, if you don't fucking stand up on that front line with Mel Gibson and get ready to go, then these sharks are just going to come through and wipe it out. And that's that masculine where we need to stand in our honor, and we stand in our grace and go, yeah, this is who I am, and this is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Yeah, do you have anything to add on to that? I don't really have a question on the back of that.
Yeah, so what's interesting around the movie thing, right, is we see this like hero that comes in, but that's deliberately placed there so people wait for someone else to do it as well. You know, we're waiting for this William Wallace, this Neo, this Aragorn, you know, these people, and there's going to be a savior that's going to come and save us. So it puts into the collective conscious or the collective subconscious and unconscious that there's a savior coming. And then we see that as like prime ministers. We see that as government waiting for the people that are asleep still anyway. There's these attributes to those films. Now, the thing I love about Braveheart, it's one of my favorite movies, but if you notice, and this is the programming, right? When he's chained up at the end in the prison cell, the Queen of France comes in and asks him to take the numbing agent and beg for mercy. right? Now, this is a real powerful scene in the interplay between feminine and feminist dynamics and the way that a woman will treat a man that she doesn't fully respect. She doesn't give a shit about him suffering. She wants him to do it so she doesn't have to suffer, right? And he's like, well, what's the point of me doing that? Because then everything I've, fought for becomes meaningless, and he won't do it. So then he takes it, but then he spits it out afterwards. And she's like, I can't bear it. It's too much for me. It's like, I'm about to get my organs fucking cut out, and you're asking me to do it so you don't have to suffer. And this is what happens, Sometimes, not all, women will want to bend and break the will of a man to say, hey, you're going to stand for what's right. And this is a really important thing that's going on in our society at the moment, is that we're seeing that move towards that at the moment, where people have had enough. Men have had enough. And there is this sort of legion of strong men being sort of born out of this, which is really good. Like, I was calling this shit out from the start. I started calling COVID out in March 2020. I was like, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be it'll be lockdowns, civil unrest, lockdowns. The election will be interfered with, then it'll be mandatory vaccinations. And people are like, what? You're insane. You're crazy. I'm like, watch, because they told us what they were going to do. I'm not some prophet. They told us. They're telling us what they're going to do. Yeah. Climate change is the next thing. Interlocked cities, so you can't leave, and there'll be digital currencies marked to postcodes. And then when that dies off, which it will, because people get over it, it'll be a staged alien invasion. Like, people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, you said the same thing when I said mandatory vaccinations are coming in, and everyone's walking around with their arm. And I'm like, I'm not putting that shit in my body. There's no fucking way. And then, like, people say to me now, they're like, fuck, dude, you were right. I'm like, yeah, well, you've got calamari swimming through your body, and you'll probably be dead. Dude, like, it's, you just got to say no at those times. And that was the hard part. And the people that survived that will be the ones left standing at the end, for sure.
Yeah. And then you come back to nature, and what's in accordance to nature, like, who is actually supporting nature, who is actually taking from nature and continuing to take from nature. And I just feel like, whether it's nature, God, whatever's playing out, is nature's removing, again, ignorance. Ignorance is no longer bliss, like, and especially in Australia, because we had that she'll be right, mate thing going for so long. And it's like, again, kind of drawing back onto, like, William Wallace being the hero, being there to save them. Like, she'll be right is no longer she'll be right. Like, you have to be there for yourself and those people standing next to you, and you've all got to be moving together, because that's essentially what is occurring. Is like, the she'll be right movement is done. Like, if you're not stepping up and you're not actually in your own power, and you're not switching your television off, or even better, throwing it out the window, like, you're going to continue to stay under that spell. And I was much like you. Like, March 2020, we were actually in Byron running a retreat, and all of a sudden, like, our guests were like talking about, they're talking about COVID and blah blah blah. And I was like, I kind of bit my tongue on that retreat, and then got back to Melbourne and drove into Melbourne, and it was as I was starting to talk about lockdowns and stuff like that. And I had my business went completely pretty much under, and I lost a lot of my clients because of what I was saying. Because and now 2-3 years down the track, it's exactly like everything that I said. It was much like what you were saying. It's all come true. And it's not as though I was spinning shit. Like, I actually went and looked for the information, and the information's all there. They've got to tell you as part of I can't think of the word now, right? But it's essentially, they're giving you the information as an informed consent on the news or whatever it is. They're telling you what they're about to do, because now you've consented to that, because you haven't actually gone and protested about it, or you haven't written into Parliament about it, because now they've informed you through the media, through propaganda. We're now going to kill you off this way. Oh yeah, cool, no worries. Yeah, sweet. Like, they've told us on the news, like, that's what's going to happen. So cool. Let's just and I got into a bit of strife around the vaccination rollout and likening it to certain World War events, and with some people that I got, they got a little bit upset with that. And but in the end, like at the moment, it's kind of it's just another way. It's just another shape of that gas chamber, you know. And I hate to say it, it and it's sad because like a lot of my family have gone and taken it, and 3 or 4 boosters deep, and like you said, like the squid swimming around just waiting to clog it up. It's just it's sad. And but drawing back onto that, it's like moving forward, we need to, again, regardless of whether you've had it or not or whatever it is, it's like moving forward, if you realize that it's have been duped, or you have been like taken for a ride, as much as it's going to be difficult to detox it, it's like now standing what you actually know and stepping into that. Okay, I know that now. I know that was wrong. Now, how do I then talk to these people who have been telling me what I should have known 3 years ago? But and are you seeing that? Are you having anyone who's kind of coming to you like going like, oh, shit, like what do I do now kind of situation? Like, are you helping with any of? Well, they just not really.
Not so much now. Like I've got a really good friend of mine who I was actually in business with him 15 years ago. And I was telling him about this stuff, how the financial system is a scam, how the world's run. He's in his 60s now, right? And he sent me a message the other day. He's like, oh my God, everything you were talking about 15 years ago is right. Like these people want to kill us. And it's a genocide. It's no different to a Holocaust. It is the Holocaust of our time. And, you know, some people got offended when I was saying that. I'm like, this is depopulation. That's what it's for. They want to kill you. And people would get offended by it. And whenever I say that, I'm like, the truth hurts when you believe your own lies. That's when the truth actually hurts, is when you believe your own lies. And so I haven't so much been getting people saying, hey, what do I do, etc. Because I think the people that have followed me for a while and know me are like, yeah, like they're a bit sheepish about it. But I did have a conversation with a good friend of mine the other day, and he's like, you know, what are you doing about it? I said, well, I'm just getting my stuff divided up into multiple asset classes, some gold, digital Bitcoin, things like that. I want to buy land and a house because I don't believe they're going to be able to take everyone's property. I don't see the evil egg Klaus Schwab like being able to pull this off. You know, like, oh yeah, we'll just take everyone's property. It's like, are you fucking mad? Like, that's just, I'm like, there's no fucking way that they get, like, if they just came in one swoop and took everyone's property at first, maybe they'd be able to do it. But they've just woken so many people up with the COVID narrative. Like, that's woken people up to no end. And people think that this whole thing's going to get pulled off. And I said, if that was in line with God's desire, God's law or spiritual nature, whatever, it would have happened and we wouldn't even know about it. It would have just been like, oh, that's the way it is. It's not meant to go that way. This is the end of that structure. That's why all the darkness has to be brought to light. And we might be in for some tough times, but I truly believe it's the end of that. It's the complete end of that. That's the way I see it. So the way that I see it as well is what people can do is, if you've had the jab, don't fucking get any more. If you're 4 or 5 boosters deep, I'm not speaking to them, and chances are they wouldn't be listening to this anyway. They'll be listening to CNN and some other garbage or whatever. So, you know, this message isn't for them. But the people that have got 1 or 2 out of like feeling that they were coerced or whatever, you've always got a choice. Some people said to me, oh, you know, I didn't have a choice. I've got a mortgage. I'm like, you put your own bodily health over a fucking house. No, I don't see that as an excuse. I had to feed my family. There's millions of ways you can make money. I didn't get it. I work for myself. People go, oh, you're privileged. I'm like, no, I work fucking hard to get into this position so I don't have to be subject to those laws. You know, like there's always a choice. I would have rather moved inland to farmland, and I'd fucking go bush if I had to. I was prepared to do whatever I needed to. And so I was rewarded for it, because now I'm like, you know, we're the purebloods. And because we stood in our truth and said, no, we're not fucking doing it. I'm not doing it. And enough of us were around for them to drop things, to not go around door to door and enforce it. So there are enough people like us around to pull that off. And even if it wasn't like necessarily in the public eye on the news that there's too many people saying no, so we won't make it happen. There are enough people that stood up, that got the information out there to where they couldn't do that. That was the part that a lot of people didn't see. And so by virtue of us being who we are, it's going to be so much harder to bring in these 15-minute walking cities or, digital dollars. I think it'll end up being two societies living as one. That's the way I see it as. Like, it'll just be, I'll be me with my Bitcoin and, the people that I work with and regenerative farmers and all that. And then next door, we'll be walking around tapped into the arm juice through IV fucking 4 times a day, living in the metaverse, so it'll just be two different worlds.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I read the other day, before he died, Stephen Hawking actually warned against what they were doing with the Higgs boson particle collider, and he warned that at some point in time, if they continued that work, that they could actually separate timelines and we wouldn't even know about it. And I'm beginning to actually ask those questions now, whether that's actually like what you said down, whether that actually occurred before they shut it down last time. Then that's the real reason why they shut it down. They created that wormhole or whatever they created to separate timelines. And now that and Hawking actually said is like, you will be able to kind of like, you realize that there's something not right within the matrix. And I feel that's kind of where some people are at. We've like kind of separated, and there has been people, and you can look and go, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, or how do you not see that is like completely batshit crazy? And or like notice little glitches and you're like, like that's a little bit odd. And so I'm actually kind of, that's one, like, because I'm always someone who questions everything. I'm like digging deeper, like, did that actually occur? But you wouldn't, like, they don't even actually know whether that occurred, because like that is a moment in time that could have potentially happened. So yeah, I feel as well like it's kind of, again, Hollywood, like you've got Katniss Everdeen, with the different districts. That's another documentary. It was a documentary telling people what was going to occur. At the end of the day, I feel like yourself. Like, I think if we continue to live our life on our terms and remove and not allow that system to continue to dominate our own thought patterns and just continue to project what we actually are here to do, again, nature will support it. And one thing you said there with I've lost my train of thought now. With the,
I just want to jump in on the CERN.
You go for it. Yeah.
CERN thing, right? Like, which is the thing in Switzerland. Like, there's a lot of satanic practices around that. And you see there was an ad for it in Switzerland, and they were doing a satanic dance with it. And then when they opened one of the tunnels over in Switzerland, there was like this, like, it was like blatantly Luciferian. So we could look at it as like, the cover of it, like discovering wormholes or whatever. But I mean, if we went a little bit further into potential Christianity, what if they're like, you look at what was that show, Stranger Things on Netflix, where they turn it upside down, where they rip the wormhole open and the Antichrist comes forward? Who's to say that they're not, trying to open the pit, the pit where Lucifer was cast down into, who knows what they're actually doing with it, because there's a lot of satanic stuff going on around it. So I've come more to the conclusion in the last, little while, all of that stuff, there's elements of like, wow, maybe that's actually what we're living in with the Nephilim and the fallen angels and the time of Noah and Lucifer. And, I think because Lucifer was his name in heaven and Satan is his name here, that was the delineation between it. It's like Jesus was who he was before he performed miracles, and Christ was who he was after that. And so I don't know, I'm starting to look at it like, wow, is this metaphorical, or is this actually, are these real entities that are part of our history that are now coming to the surface. We just saw it with what's his name? Sam Smith and his Luciferian went on at the Grammys. It's like this stuff's becoming, I don't know if I'm seeing more of it or it's becoming more blatant, but it's almost like we're heading to a point where it seems like a singularity is going to occur, where the whole world's going to break open into the truth of what's really going on. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is that traditional battle of good and evil. Like I'm not opposed to thinking that that's just bullshit anymore. So yeah, that's kind of my thing on that.
Yeah, well, and just now piggybacking on the back of that, it's like then you look into like the Book of Revelations and stuff like that. You know, there's a lot of those, like the mark of the beast, a lot of the natural disasters that are taking place are all in the Book of Revelations. Whether that's actually now taking place and all this stuff is, like you said, it's coming to a head. And then you look at like Hindu mythology with the way that the different movements of the calendar, and we're moving through that Kali Yuga. Like the Kali Yuga is that destruction and like movement, you know. So depending on, like, again, being from that Catholicism kind of upbringing and stuff, and looking a lot into mythology and the way that like certain figures play out in certain mythological like texts, there's always that overlay of the same kind of message, regardless of whether it's the Bible, the Quran. There's always that same kind of person that's occurring. And yeah, like you said, I think they've all got this kind of common theme of where that direction is heading or where we are right now. So regardless of like what your thought pattern is, there is that something is playing out. And each of these puppets all have a role. Each of these people all have a role in what is occurring, whether it's Lucifer's henchmen or whether it's the angels are looking after us or whatever. There's all a role to be played. And to be able to see that, I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we've been given right now, is to be able to see it from a macro level rather than being in it. Because that's what I get people messaging me daily, like, oh, look at this, like, look at that. And I'm like, just zoom out. Just look at like what's going on. Just look at like what's going on. Even like stock market wise, cryptocurrency wise, like seeing that move, that little like chart move up and down, but then you zoom out and you go, oh, this is actually what's playing out, and it's nature's playing out in the market as well. Like you're okay, cool. Like I'll just take a breather on this rather than selling my entire net worth because the news has now told me that I need to sell. But it's only, again, it's a wealth transfer that's occurring because they're all crooked as fuck. So it's when you start to see it, and like you said, you come back to that earlier point where it's patterns. The patterns play out consistently throughout life. That's the way it is. And yeah, like I love that what you just said then. It just makes so much sense, you know.
Well, just with the Bible thing, right? There's a couple of things like Nisargadatta, who I'm a big fan of. He was like an Indian man that was just profound, right? He said all religions are the same meaning but different words, right? Which I tend to agree with. And this was about 2 years ago. I was speaking to a mate of mine, and I said to him, I go, "What's your take on the Bible?" And he goes, "I don't know about the Bible, mate. But what I know is that the Satanists do the opposite to what the Bible says. So there's some magic in it. You know, you look at Satanists, their symbol is like the upside down cross, which is Antichrist. And so it's like, just in that logical, you know, the way that he just addressed it so logically, he goes, I don't know, but I know that it's magic because the Satanists invert what the Bible says. They do the opposite to that. It's like, even if you look at the gay flag as an example, like if we look at the colors that represent the wheels of the chakra, the gay flag is that inverted, right? So it's top down and bottom up, right? So it's like there's symbolism everywhere in all of that stuff. And so, you know, like the Bible calls that kind of stuff an abomination. I don't care if you want to do it. It's nothing personal, like fill your boots, whatever. But there's reasons that they invert that stuff. You know, it's like Baphomet. having both male and female characteristics, as above, so below, you know, the goat-headed demon. Now we're looking at with the trans movement, right? Oh, I'm androgynous. I don't have, it's like sex is so yesterday, like as in male and female, and it's made up. You know, I had this woman once say, oh, it's about getting back to the 0 point of, and masculine and feminine terms are outdated. I said, do you even know in physics what the term of 0 point actually is? And she's like, you just talking to yourself. And I said, feminism, and she goes, feminism is the way. I said, you just said the masculine and feminine are outdated. I said, feminine is an arm of neo-Marxism. It's an arm of communism. And what it is, it seeks to subvert social programming through destabilization, demoralization, crisis, and then normalization. And I said, and these are the 4 steps we're in. We're in crisis at the moment. And this is called subversion. And it's a tactic used where the people that use it say the greatest war you ever win is the one you never have to fight. And I explained it in a very articulate way to her. And she goes, thanks for mansplaining. I said, well, if that's mansplaining and you still don't understand it, then you really are a fucking idiot, you know, because it's, this is the like, and this is where we get to the programming of feminists just want to blame men for everything, right? It's like, well, you're stupid. It's like, well, if I'm stupid, you've got like 2 brain cells maybe, or like I said, you've got 2 brains, one's lost and the other one's finding it, because you can't even engage in the right dialogue with me, which is through an intellectual, logical, reasoned, analytical debate, versus you getting all emotional because you don't understand what I'm saying. So this is where it's like, we're in this kind of soup of all these like things playing out at the moment. Like whether we make it, bro, or whether we don't, this will be the most interesting time of our lives. That's for sure.
Oh, 100%. And like being a dad and and then with having another one on the way, that's one of the big things is like, what the hell, like one of my main goals and the reasons for being here right now is actually teaching my son how to be a man and how to continue on and give him the tools that I know and everything that I've learned and everything that I have been exposed to. And I probably will still have done a whole heap wrong, but it's like what I allow him right now in this moment to learn is going to set him forward in the future. The reason why he's here, like there's a reason why he chose to come during 2020, like through one of the shittest times in our living history, for a lot of people, to choose to come here to incarnate here right now. And then this next baby is coming again, like as well. So there's like the reason why these children have been brought into the world right now to parents like myself and my partner and other parents, and any child really who hasn't had the misfortune of being juiced, is they're here to fuck shit up. Really, they're here to actually be the warriors that they're supposed to be here, or they're here to actually run the world the way it's supposed to. And I find like I get overwhelmed sometimes because it's like, holy shit, like this is such a responsibility as a parent right now, more than just kind of just floating around, like sowing the seed, having the baby, then going sinking a million beers and just like coming home and drinking and blah, blah, blah. And like not actually paying attention to the development of that child, like realizing what the magnitude of that growth that is occurring right now and how that can potentially be formed into a child that's going to just absolutely help this world once I've gone, is almost a legacy moment, you know? And I think that's where drawing into my next question is like, what legacy are we leaving? Like, that's the thing, is like, what legacy, no matter where you are at your journey, it's like, what legacy are you leaving on this earth when you drop, like you said, like this is our biggest moment in our lives. It's like, so what legacy are you actually leaving when you drop the body? Like when you're no longer here, like what is going to be left from what you've done? Have you taken too much? Have you taken so much that nobody, like, or have you given and people are actually enriched by your life? And that's what I feel like you're actually building a legacy off the back of that. And like, yeah, I'd be interested to see, like, is there a legacy that you're kind of either inadvertently or like have a mindset towards?
Yeah, like that's a good question as well. Like typically when I hear of legacy, it's like I think of like a man's name on the side of a building through some company that he's built. And I see that as a bit grandiose, right? It's almost narcissistic. Like I want my name and people need to remember me for all eternity. That's not really like the legacy that I see. I see raising good children so they're a benefit to the planet rather than a benefactor of being a victim, so to speak, for lack of a better word. But my thing is really to impart my knowledge to people to help them dissolve, resolve, and absolve the trauma that they've been through so they can become a better mother, a better father, and to bring in a generation of integrous and clean. And I say clean from the point of, largely resolved of their ancestral parental lineage that is clearly passed down the wounding. We've had a horrendous line of the last couple of 100 years of a lot of wounding, but also to teach people how to do what I do so they can help themselves. They become a more, for lack of a better term, where we both live in the Northern Rivers, like a high vibe person, but more of like a clear, heart-centered and, not ego-controlled mindscape that they live within so they can make better choices. They're more aware. They're more, awake to who they are. They've got drive, passion, purpose, desire to do better, to leave something that lasts in the form of a beautiful human that comes into the world, that comes from love and kindness and gentleness and strength and integrity and honor, and really embody and encapsulate these. Because what we see in the world at the moment, a lot of people like challenge me and they're like, you're not a fucking therapist because you're fucking speaking out against this. You need the healing, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, if the psychology industry was that good, it would have been over and ended 50 to 100 years ago because everyone in that lineage would have been healed and there'd be no requirement for it. So my ultimate legacy is to never have another client because that means that everyone's healed, right? So I don't want clients because then everyone's good. That the chances of that happening in this fractured world, I don't think it's going to happen. So teach people how to do my work so then they can take something that actually does resolve the shit that people have been carrying their whole lives, like real results that get past. I get messages every day from people that I worked with 2, 3, 4 years ago, and they're like, hey, I just wanted to check in that like when we did that work 3 years ago, I just had a message today about it, yesterday, sorry. And she said, the work I did with you just changed my life. And this is what's happened since then. She came to me after having an affair with a school teacher and didn't know what she wanted to do. And kids were fucking like on medication. She recently, after that, won Australia's most prestigious art prize. Marriage is better. Their kids are off medication. She's opened up 2 shops. She's become financially abundant. I get messages like this all the time. She went from one person that was like the false socially constructed version to her true self, but after doing the work together. And I get messages like this all the time. So my legacy is to leave people like that, right? Because I don't need a symbol on the wall or my name on a wall. I don't need any of that shit. What I truly desire for the planet is to leave people better than the way they than when they were before they encountered me. And so to transfer that to parents, then they can raise better children. The children grow up without the wounding, the scarring, the trauma. Then we've got like, I just got a new dog recently, right? And he's an Aussie Shepherd and he's 10 months. And this dog is pristine, no trauma, never been attacked by another dog. And just his energetic state, he's intelligent, he's gentle, he's obedient, he's very sweet, very affectionate, hilarious. Like he's just got no trauma. He doesn't know what threats or danger are. So he's just like, oh, bush turkey. Oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? Like he's curious about everything. There's a wonder to him, right? And so I look at this dog as this beautiful example of what a being is like without any trauma, right? He's playful, he's fun. And most dogs are a lot of the time, but you'll get other dogs that are super aggressive that have been traumatized. And so my legacy is really to leave as many people as possible in a better way than when I found them. And I've worked with thousands of people already. My life goal is to train 100,000 therapists. So they're out there doing this work. And then that way, like that'll just ripple on. That'll have a bigger effect than I can ever do on my own. So that's really my legacy for this lifetime.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And that's much like myself and Emma as well. Like with our business, it's more than having that plaque on the wall, you know. It's actually, yeah, like you said, setting people up to actually then carry on that healing, to allow them. And the big thing is actually, like you said at the beginning there, it's like having allowing people to heal and giving them the tools to heal themselves, and go to those points, and then being the guide rather than being that guru that they keep coming to and not actually taking anything in. It's like I go and do the work, come back in a few years and go, hey, I actually had that realization. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's amazing. And that's drawing on to my final question, is like, the work that you're doing right now, is like, is there anything anywhere, or what is the offering that you have at the moment that listeners could potentially contact you with, and yeah, anything you've got going on?
So I'm doing like a mentorship, which I don't really like the term mentorship because it puts me in an elevated status, but it's like my teaching. So I'm going to be teaching pretty much everything I know, the 12 fundamental programs or prisons that we live within. I'm doing I'm doing a course at the moment on 8 fundamental prisons, but there's 12. So the 8 are the main ones, and there's 4 sort of extensions of those. So I'll be teaching that all around, like victim identity, ego to soul living, social constructs, reversing disease, like the whole bit, how to use language to identify it. I'll be working with people one-on-one in that, and I'll also be teaching people. I'm going to get them to work with each other so they can learn to use my system. Because once you learn this, if you're dedicated to it, you'll be able to identify what's going on for someone just by the way they speak, right? And that's a very powerful gift to have, because you can help bring them to awareness. And when, as you would know, the more awareness you have, the more expanded you become, the more you heal. Awareness is healing, right? That's my opinion of it. I've seen it many times before. So I've got that. I've only got 2 spots left in that, because I'm only working with 10 people every 3 months with that. And I'll probably reduce that to 5 after that. And just a little bit of one-on-one stuff. Not so much. I don't have that much in the works at the moment for any more group stuff. I may do something, I don't know. So I'm just kind of like, you know, encouraging people to, if you want to do some work, reach out. If there's a cancellation, I'll work with you one-on-one. But these groups are what I'm really focusing on now. So I'd say probably in the next month or so, I'll probably start up another group where I just work with people in a group setting and do 1 to 2 sessions a week with that. And I might just keep that rolling on a monthly thing so people can just stay in it and get sessions with me, see me work on other people. The power of my work is that when someone sees me work with someone else, they will still heal as well. Like in my recordings of the group that I do, you can see the Zoom list on the side. I'll work with one person, I'll see another person shaking, another person crying, another person going like this. So it's popping multiple people in a group setting. So I think that's really powerful. So I'll be doing that stuff again soon. So everything's on my Instagram, Pure Jaguar. People call me Pure Jaguar. I think they're like, I'm known as Pure Jaguar, which I'm like, my name's Jaguar. I'm not Pure Jaguar. But on my website, jaguarheart.co.
Beautiful, mate. There's a lot of the stuff that you've been posting and stuff, even like the value system that you put in place with even just like the people you work with, and how you want the people to show up is amazing, because then it really does get the people that actually really want to do the work and actually show up. We've had those discussions in the DMs before. And then on that note, I think we might wrap it there and maybe leave the door open for an episode 2 down the track.
Yeah, man, would love that.
Cool, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. All of the information about Jaguar will be in the show notes. If you loved this episode, please give it a like and even a share. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, could you give me a 5-star rating to continue to beat that algorithm and put the podcast at the top of the charts? So once again, thank you so much. I'm your host, Tyson Venables. Until next time, see you later.